The massive ship moved through space like a floating city. Its silver hull stretched for miles, covered in lights that blinked in patterns known across the galaxy. This was the Harmony of Worlds flagship of the Galactic Council. Inside its halls walked beings from hundreds of different planets, all working together for peace and progress. Ambassador Zixithera stood on the bridge, her forearms folded behind her back. Her blue skin shimmered under the soft lights as she watched the yellow star grow larger on the main screen. Sol, the locals called it. Around the third planet from the star lived a species that had just discovered radio waves. Time for first contact. Standard approach, Navigator Kel, she said to the insect-like being at the controls. Follow Protocol 7. Let them see us coming, but don't frighten them. Kel's compound eyes clicked as they focused on the controls. Yes, Ambassador. Approaching the outer system now. Should I broadcast the standard greeting? Not yet. Let's observe them first. Every species is different. Zixithera had done this 127 times before. Some species were excited to meet the galaxy. Others were scared. A few tried to hide. But they all eventually joined the council. It was better than being alone in the dark. The ship slowed as it passed the 8th planet from the star. The humans called it Neptune, according to their radio signals. The council had been listening to Earth's broadcasts for 50 years now. Music, news, stories, all the signs of a young civilization ready to take its place among the stars. Ambassador called Communications Officer Venth from her station. We're receiving a transmission. Zixithera's head turned. Already? We haven't even announced ourselves yet. It appears to be coming from a small vessel, approaching from the direction of the 4th planet. Show me. The main screen changed to show a tiny ship moving toward them. It was primitive by galactic standards, built from metal and chemical rockets. But it was fast for such basic technology, and it was heading straight for the Harmony of Worlds. Open a channel, Zixithera ordered. The screen flickered, then showed the inside of the human ship. A single person sat in what looked like a cramped cockpit. The human appeared to be female, with dark hair pulled back from her face. She wore a simple blue uniform with symbols the Council's computers quickly translated as military ranks. This is Captain Sarah Chen of the Earth Defense Force, the human said. Her voice was calm and clear. You are approaching restricted space. Turn around and leave this system immediately. Silence filled the bridge of the Harmony of Worlds. In 50,000 years of galactic history, no species had ever told the Council to leave. Ever Zixithera blinked all 4 of her eyes in sequence, a sign of confusion in her species. Captain Chen, I am Ambassador Zixithera of the Galactic Council. We come in peace, offering friendship and knowledge to your people. I don't care who you are or what you're offering, Chen replied. Turn around. You are not welcome here. This is your only warning. The ambassador looked around her bridge. Her crew stared back with expressions of shock. Species across the galaxy dreamed of this moment. First contact with advanced civilizations. Trade, technology, medicine, art. The Council offered all of this freely to new members. Captain, perhaps you don't understand. We represent 847 different species across the galaxy. We offer your people membership in a community of worlds. Think of what we could teach you. Your diseases could be cured. Your people could travel between the stars. Chen's expression didn't change. We said stay away from Earth, we meant it. Communications Officer Venth whispered to the ambassador. Should I try the translation matrix? Maybe something is being lost in the language conversion. Zixithera shook her head. The human's words were clear enough. Captain Chen, at least allow us to speak with your leaders. Surely they would want to hear our offer. I am speaking for my leaders, and for my people. Leave. Now. The small human ship had moved closer during their conversation. It was now positioned directly between the Harmony of Worlds and Earth. One tiny vessel blocking a ship thousands of times larger. Captain, Zixithera tried again. Your ship is very small. We mean no harm, but if there was an accident, there won't be an accident, Chen said. Because you're going to turn around and leave. Right now, Navigator Kel spoke up. Ambassador, should I plot a course around their vessel? We could easily avoid them. Before Zixithera could answer, Chen's voice cut through the bridge. I can hear you talking. Don't think about going around me. This entire system is off limits to you and anyone else who isn't from Earth. How can you possibly enforce such a claim? The ambassador asked. You have one ship. We have thousands. For the first time, Chen smiled. It wasn't a friendly expression. Would you like to find out? Something in her tone made Zixithera pause. In all her years of first contact, she had learned to read the subtle signs of different species. Fear, excitement, confusion, she had seen them all, but this human showed none of those emotions. Instead, there was something else. Something that made the ambassador's skin crawl. Confidence. Not the confidence of someone bluffing or hoping to scare off a superior force. This was the confidence of someone who knew exactly what they were capable of and wasn't worried about the outcome. Captain Chen, Zixithera said slowly. What exactly are you protecting? Earth, Chen replied simply. And trust me, you don't want to get any closer to it. Are your people in danger? Are there hostile forces in your system? The Council could help protect you. Chen laughed, but there was no humor in it. We're not protecting Earth from outside threats, Ambassador. We're protecting outside threats from Earth. The bridge fell silent again. Zixithera tried to process what she was hearing. A species protecting others from their own planet? It made no sense. Planets were supposed to be safe havens, places where life could grow and flourish. What kind of world would be dangerous to visitors? I don't understand, the ambassador admitted. Good, Chen said. That means you're smart enough to listen to a warning when you hear one. Turn around, Ambassador Zixithera of the Galactic Council. Go back to your 847 species and tell them that Earth is off limits. Tell them humans said so. And tell them that if they're wise, they'll listen. The communication channel closed, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Navigator Kell was the first to speak. Ambassador, what are your orders? Zixithera stared at the screen showing the small human ship. It hadn't moved from its position, blocking their path. One vessel, one person, standing against the might of the galactic community. Set course for the edge of the system, she said finally. Send a message to the Council. Tell them we need to discuss this situation before proceeding. As the harmony of worlds slowly turned away from Earth, Zixithera watched the human ship on her screen. Captain Chen had returned to her position between the Council vessel and her homeworld. She sat there like a guardian, small but unmovable. For the first time in her long career, Ambassador Zixithera felt uncertain about first contact. Something was very wrong here, or very right, depending on how you looked at it. Either way, she had the feeling that the Galactic Council was about to learn something new about the universe, and she wasn't sure they were going to like it. The Council Chamber was the largest room on the space station that served as the Galactic Government's headquarters. Representatives from 847 different worlds sat in curved rows that spiraled up toward a dome ceiling covered in stars. The room buzzed with conversation in dozens of languages as beings tried to understand the report they had just heard. Ambassador Zixithera stood at the center podium, her blue skin pale under the bright lights. She had just finished telling the Council about her encounter with the humans. The reaction was exactly what she had expected: confusion, disbelief, and growing curiosity. Let me understand this correctly, said Counselor Herex, a massive reptilian being from the Draconis sector. A single human in a primitive spacecraft told you to leave their system? And you actually did it? The situation was more complex than that, Zixithera replied. Something about their behavior suggested we should take their warning seriously. Nonsense, growled General Korath from the military section. The Bruthan warrior stood 8 feet tall, covered in thick armor-like skin. No pre-FTL species has ever refused Council contact. They're probably just scared. A show of force will make them see reason. Several other military representatives nodded in agreement. The Council had protocols for dealing with difficult first contacts. Sometimes young species needed to see the benefits of galactic civilization before they understood what was being offered. I recommend caution, said Dr. Yelith, the Council's chief xenobiologist. Her species looked like walking trees and her voice rustled like leaves in wind. If a species is actively warning us away from their world, there might be a reason. What reason could there possibly be? Asked Counselor Herex. Are they claiming to have superior weapons? Their technology level suggests they barely understand nuclear fusion. The debate continued for hours. Some council members thought the humans were bluffing. Others worried about unknown diseases or environmental hazards. A few suggested that Earth might be under the protection of another galactic power, though no one could think of which one. Finally, Supreme Counselor Vaex called for order. The ancient being was older than recorded history, and her word was law in the Council. We will send a small task force to investigate. 3 ships, standard diplomatic immunity, If the humans are hiding something dangerous, we need to know what it is. General Korath stood and saluted. I volunteer to lead the mission, Supreme Counselor. Approved. But remember, General, this is a diplomatic mission with military escort, not an invasion. Find out what makes these humans so confident, then report back. 3 days later, General Korath's task force approached the Sol system. His flagship, the Iron Will, was accompanied by 2 heavy cruisers. Together, they represented enough firepower to destroy most planetary defenses. Surely the humans would be reasonable when faced with such strength. They never made it past the outer planets. The mines appeared on their sensors as tiny blips, scattered throughout the space around Neptune's orbit. At first, Korath thought they were asteroids or space debris. Then his science officer ran a detailed scan. General, these objects are artificial. They appear to be some kind of explosive device. Korath laughed, a sound like grinding stone. Primitive mines? How quaint. Navigator, plot a course through the field. Weapons officer, prepare to clear any obstacles. The science officer's voice was uncertain. Sir, I'm reading some unusual energy signatures from these devices. The power levels seem much higher than they should be for human technology. Impossible. Their civilization is barely past chemical rockets. How dangerous could their mines be? Very dangerous, as it turned out. The first mine that detected the Iron Will activated with a flash of light that temporarily blinded the ship's sensors. When the screens cleared, there was a sphere of twisted space where the mine had been. Not an explosion exactly, but something that made the stars behind it look bent and wrong. All stop, Korath ordered, but it was too late. The gravitational distortion was pulling his ship toward it like a whirlpool in space. The Iron Will fought against the pull, its engines straining at maximum power. What kind of weapon is this? The general demanded. I don't know, sir. The science officer replied, fear clear in his voice. It appears to be some kind of artificial gravity well. The energy requirements for creating such a thing should be impossible for their technology level. The second cruiser, Swift Justice, tried to help by firing cables to pull the flagship free. Instead, it got caught in the same gravitational trap. Both ships tumbled toward the center of the distortion, their hulls groaning under stresses they weren't designed to handle. The third ship, Starhammer, managed to stay clear of the trap, but more mines were activating all around them. Each one created its own pocket of twisted space, turning the outer system into a maze of gravitational hazards. Emergency jump, Korath ordered. Get us out of here. The ships that could still move engaged their faster-than-light drives, tearing themselves free from the minefield and jumping to a safe distance. When they regrouped, Korath counted his losses. The Iron Will was badly damaged, its hull cracked and twisted. 40 crew members were dead, crushed when part of the ship collapsed under gravitational stress. But the worst part wasn't the damage or the casualties. It was what happened next. As the Bruthan ships limped away from the minefield, human vessels appeared. Not primitive chemical rockets, but sleek ships that moved with impossible grace. They didn't attack the damaged council ships. Instead, they surrounded them and transmitted a message. The face that appeared on Korath's screen was human, but unlike Captain Chen, this one was clearly military leadership. An older male with gray hair and sharp eyes, wearing a uniform covered in medals and rank insignia. I am Admiral Marcus Steel of the Earth Defense Force, the human said. You have entered restricted space and triggered our defensive systems. Your damaged vessels will be escorted to the edge of the system, where you will receive medical assistance for your wounded. How dare you? Korath snarled. We are representatives of the Galactic Council. You demand nothing, Admiral Steel interrupted. You were warned to stay away from Earth. You chose to ignore that warning. Consider yourselves fortunate that our mines are designed to disable, not destroy. The human ships moved to flank the Council vessels. Korath noticed they flew in formations that seemed to ignore basic physics. Sharp turns that should have liquefied their crews. Sudden stops that violated momentum. Acceleration patterns that defied known science. What are those ships made of? His science officer whispered. The stress forces they're experiencing should tear them apart. Admiral Steel seemed to hear the comment through the open channel. Our ships are built to survive in Earth's neighborhood, General. That means they're built to survive almost anything. The escort continued in silence until they reached the edge of the system. True to their word, the humans provided medical aid for the injured council personnel, but they also made it clear that any attempt to return would be met with stronger measures. As the damaged council ships jumped away toward their headquarters, General Korath stared back at the Sol system. For the first time in his military career, he had been defeated by an enemy he didn't understand. The humans hadn't just beaten him with superior technology. They had done it with weapons that shouldn't exist, ships that ignored physical laws, and a confidence that suggested they weren't even trying very hard. Whatever these humans were hiding on Earth, it was powerful enough to make them the most dangerous species the galaxy had ever encountered, and they had just told the Galactic Council to stay away from it. Korath began to think that maybe, just maybe, the humans were giving good advice. The emergency session of the Galactic Council lasted 3 days. General Korath's report had shaken the foundations of everything they thought they knew about the universe. A primitive species had not only refused contact, but had actually defeated a council military force using technology that shouldn't exist. Dr. Yilith stood before a wall-sized display, showing the wreckage of the mines that had been recovered from the outer Sol system. Her tree-like form swayed as she gestured with branch-like arms toward the twisted metal and crystal components. These devices use principles we consider theoretical impossibilities, she explained to the assembled representatives. They create localized gravity wells by compressing space-time itself. The energy requirements should be beyond any civilization that hasn't mastered stellar engineering. Yet somehow these primitive humans have done exactly that, said Counselor Hrex, his reptilian features twisted in confusion. How is this possible? We don't know, Dr. Yeleth admitted, which is why I'm recommending a comprehensive study of the human homeworld. We need to understand what we're dealing with. Supreme Counselor Vaex nodded slowly. Approved. But this time we observe from a distance. No direct contact until we understand the situation better. The Council's most advanced stealth ships positioned themselves at the edge of the Sol system, far beyond the human minefields. They deployed sensor probes disguised as asteroids and space debris, each one equipped with the finest observation equipment the galaxy could produce. If the humans had secrets, the Council would discover them. What they found defied all logic. Earth itself was wrong. Every planet the Council had ever studied followed predictable patterns: stable climates, reasonable gravity, manageable weather systems. Earth was a nightmare world that seemed designed to kill anything living on it. The planet spun through space at impossible speeds, creating day and night cycles that changed constantly. Massive storms raged across its surface, some large enough to swallow entire moons. The weather shifted from killing heat to freezing cold in cycles that would drive most species extinct. And the geological activity was beyond belief. The ground itself moved, creating mountains and destroying cities with earthquakes that registered as small explosions on galactic sensors. How does anything survive down there? Asked Dr. Yeleth as she reviewed the atmospheric data. The oxygen levels alone should be toxic to most carbon-based life forms. Her assistant, a young researcher named Pelk, brought up images of Earth's surface. It gets worse, Doctor. Look at the life forms. The pictures showed creatures that violated every principle of evolutionary biology. Massive predators with claws and teeth designed for nothing but killing. Flying reptiles that could swallow smaller animals whole. Ocean dwellers with more teeth than seemed physically possible. And that was just the animal life. The plants were equally dangerous, with toxins that could kill most galactic species just from skin contact. These creatures are all apex predators, Pelk observed. But that's impossible. Every ecosystem needs a balance between predators and prey. This planet appears to be nothing but different types of killers competing with each other. And the humans live among all of this, Dr. Yeleth whispered. Not just survive, they thrive. The long-range observations continued for weeks. The Council scientists watched in growing horror as they learned more about human behavior. The beings didn't just adapt to their deadly world, they seemed to enjoy its dangers. Humans deliberately threw themselves out of aircraft for recreation, trusting their lives to fabric parachutes. They climbed vertical rock faces using only their hands and feet. They dove to crushing ocean depths where the pressure should have killed them instantly. They deliberately exposed themselves to the planet's violent weather systems, calling it adventure tourism. They're insane, Pelk declared after watching footage of humans surfing ocean waves during a storm. No rational species would engage in such behavior. But Dr. Yeleth was beginning to understand something more disturbing. They're not insane. They're adapted. Look at their physical capabilities. The data was staggering. Humans could run for hours without stopping. something no other known species could do. Their reaction times were impossibly fast. They could survive injuries that would kill most galactic citizens. They could function in temperature ranges that spanned from Arctic cold to desert heat, and their endurance was beyond anything in the biological databases. It's as if their entire species evolved specifically to survive impossible conditions. Dr. Yilleth concluded. The surveillance revealed something even more troubling. The humans knew they were being watched. Council stealth technology was the finest in the galaxy, invisible to sensors, and undetectable by any known means. Yet somehow humans were tracking every probe and observation post. Amateur astronomers with primitive telescopes were posting locations of Council ships on their global communication networks. Human children were making games out of spotting UFOs, unidentified flying objects, and their accuracy was frightening. How are they doing this? Demanded General Korath during one of the briefing sessions. Our stealth systems have fooled civilizations millions of years more advanced than them. We don't know, replied Intelligence Chief Nexor, a spider-like being with dozens of eyes. But they're not just detecting our ships. They're studying us. We've intercepted communications suggesting they know the exact specifications of our vessels, our crew complements, even our operational procedures. The final shock came when the Council detected human ships leaving Earth's solar system. Not primitive chemical rockets, but advanced vessels using technology that shouldn't exist. The humans were already spreading to other star systems, setting up hidden bases and observation posts throughout the local galactic region. They're watching us watch them, Nexor reported grimly. And they've been doing it for decades. Dr. Yilleth assembled her final report with growing dread. Every piece of data pointed to the same impossible conclusion. Humanity wasn't a primitive species at the dawn of space travel. They were something far more dangerous. The humans aren't just adapted to survive on their world, she told the emergency council session. They've turned survival into an art form. Every challenge their planet throws at them makes them stronger, smarter, more capable. They don't see obstacles. They see opportunities to become better than they were. Supreme Counselor Vaex studied the data with ancient eyes. What are you saying, Doctor? I'm saying that Earth didn't create monsters despite the humans living there. Earth created monsters because the humans living there demanded it. They've spent their entire evolutionary history in competition with a planet that actively tries to kill them, and they've won that competition so thoroughly that they now consider mortal danger to be entertainment. The council chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. A species that treated death as a game, a civilization that had weaponized their own survival instincts, a people who had looked at the most dangerous planet anyone had ever seen and decided to call it home. No wonder they told us to stay away, whispered Counselor Rex. They weren't protecting themselves from us. They were protecting us from them. As if summoned by his words, every communication system in the chamber activated simultaneously. The screen showed a simple message in the languages of all 847 Council species. We know you're watching. We know you're confused. We know you're scared. You should be. Stay away from Earth. This is your final warning. The message cut off, leaving the Council in stunned silence. They had spent weeks studying humanity, thinking they were the observers. Only now did they realize the truth. They were the ones being studied. And the humans had just told them that the lesson was over. The War Council met in the deepest levels of the Council headquarters, in a chamber designed to be completely secure from any form of surveillance. General Korath sat at the head of a table surrounded by the military leaders of 12 different species, each representing the most powerful fleets in the galaxy. The situation has become unacceptable, Korath declared, his massive fist clenched on the metal table. No single species can be allowed to threaten galactic peace. The humans must be brought under Council authority. Admiral Vexhai of the Crystal Fleet nodded agreement. Her crystalline body chimed softly as she moved. My ships have detected human vessels in 17 different systems. They're expanding rapidly, claiming territory without Council approval. They're establishing what they call defensive positions, added General Thork of the Iron Legion. But these positions are clearly military bases designed to monitor Council activities. The debate continued for hours. Some argued for economic sanctions. Others suggested diplomatic isolation. But Korath had made up his mind. The humans needed to learn that the galaxy had rules and those rules would be enforced. I propose a limited military action, he announced. 12 ships, enough to establish a quarantine zone around Earth. We're not invading, we're protecting galactic security. The vote was close, but it passed. Within days, the largest battle fleet ever assembled for a police action was heading towards Sol. Korath commanded from his new flagship, the Galactic Justice, a massive dreadnought equipped with weapons that could crack planets. They never reached Earth. The human fleet that intercepted them appeared from nowhere, rising out of empty space like predators emerging from tall grass. 50 ships, each one sleek and deadly, moving in formations that hurt to watch. Where did they come from? Demanded Captain Yorth from the navigation station. Our sensors showed empty space. They were hiding in the asteroid fields, reported the tactical officer. But that's impossible. The radiation from those rocks should have fried their electronics. Korath studied the approaching human vessels. They moved like living things, flowing around each other in patterns that seemed random but felt purposeful. No mechanical ship should be able to fly like that. Open communication channels, he ordered. The human face that appeared on his screen was familiar. Captain Sarah Chen, the woman who had first warned them away from Earth. But she wasn't alone this time. Behind her stood dozens of other humans, all wearing the same military uniforms, all watching the Council fleet with the same calm confidence. General Korath, Chen said, and somehow she knew his name despite never having met him. You were warned to stay away from Earth. You chose to ignore that warning twice. Captain Chen, by authority of the Galactic Council, I order you to withdraw your vessels and submit to Council jurisdiction. Chen smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. No, you are vastly outnumbered, Korath pointed out. My fleet has 12 capital ships and over 3,000 crew members. Your 50 vessels cannot possibly match our firepower. Would you like to test that theory? Chen asked. Before Korath could respond, his tactical officer screamed a warning. Incoming missiles! Hundreds of them. The Council ships opened fire with every weapon they had, filling space with energy beams and explosive shells. But the human missiles moved like nothing they had ever seen. They twisted through the defensive fire like living snakes, dodging beams that should have vaporized them instantly. When the missiles struck, they didn't explode. Instead, they attached themselves to the Council ships' hulls and began doing something that made no sense. The tactical displays showed the weapons were somehow eating through the armor, dissolving the metal and crystal plating like acid. What are those things? Korath demanded. Nanites, Chen's voice came through the communication channel. Self-replicating molecular machines. They're converting your ship's armor into more nanites. Very efficient. The Galactic Justice shuddered as its outer hull began to disappear. Around the fleet, other Council ships were reporting the same impossible weapon. Armor that had withstood the fire of entire armies was being consumed by microscopic machines that shouldn't exist. Surrender now, Chen advised, and we'll stop the nanites before they reach your life support systems. Never. Korath roared. All ships ramming speed. If we're going to die, we'll take some of them with us. The Council ships surged forward, their captains prepared to sacrifice themselves rather than submit to a primitive species. It was a brave gesture and completely useless. The human ship simply moved out of the way. Not the slow, ponderous maneuvers of normal spacecraft, but instant changes of direction that violated every law of physics. One moment they were directly ahead of the charging Council fleet. The next they were scattered throughout the battle zone like dancers avoiding clumsy partners. How are they doing that? Captain Yorth screamed as he watched a human ship perform a 90-degree turn at full speed without slowing down. The answer came from the science station. Sir, I'm detecting massive gravitational manipulations around their vessels. They're somehow creating localized fields that allow them to ignore momentum and inertia. Korath watched in stunned silence as his great fleet was systematically disabled by an enemy that moved like ghosts and fought with weapons from nightmares. Within 17 minutes, every Council ship was dead in space, their crews trapped inside hulls that were slowly being consumed by hungry machines. Attention Council vessels. Chen's voice filled their communication channels. You will now be boarded. Do not resist. You are about to receive an education. The boarding parties that teleported onto the Council ships were unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. They moved through the disabled vessels like they owned them, completely unafraid of armed resistance. When Council security forces tried to fight back, the humans simply moved faster than their opponents could track. But they didn't kill their prisoners. Instead, they did something far more disturbing. They gave them a tour. General Korath found himself in a human transport vessel, surrounded by council officers from the other ships. Their human guides were polite, almost friendly, as they explained what they were seeing. "This is our recreational facility," said Lieutenant Rodriguez, a young human woman who spoke perfect Bruthan. "We use it for physical conditioning and combat training." Korath watched through the transparent walls as humans engaged in activities that looked like warfare. They fought with weapons, practiced with explosives, and competed in contests that would have hospitalized most galactic species. But they were smiling while they did it. "This is training?" asked Admiral Vexhai in disbelief. "This is play," Rodriguez corrected. "Our actual military training is much more intense." They were shown human entertainment, stories and games that celebrated violence with a creativity that made seasoned warriors sick. They watched human sports that were essentially ritualized combat, with participants throwing themselves into collisions that should have been fatal. "Why do you do this to yourselves?" whispered Dr. Kent, the fleet's chief medical officer. "Because it's fun," Rodriguez replied simply, "and because it makes us stronger." But the worst part was yet to come. The humans showed their prisoners recordings of Earth's history, 10,000 years of almost continuous warfare, each conflict more devastating than the last. Yet somehow each war had made humanity stronger, more unified, more capable. Korath watched footage of humans charging into battle against impossible odds, throwing themselves at enemies who outnumbered them 1,000 to 1. He saw them invent new ways to kill each other, then turn those same innovations into tools for exploration and creation. He watched them face annihilation repeatedly, and somehow find victory in the depths of absolute defeat. "Your species fights for territory, resources, survival," Rodriguez explained as the recordings played. "We fight for ideas, honor, freedom, justice, concepts that don't even exist in physical form. And we're willing to die for them." The tour ended with a presentation from the fleet's commander, Admiral Marcus Steel. He stood before the captured council officers with the same calm confidence they had seen from every human. "You came here to force us to submit to your authority," he said. "But you don't understand what you're dealing with. We are not a primitive species that stumbled into space travel. We are the product of 10,000 years of evolutionary pressure that would have destroyed any other civilization." He gestured to the displays showing Earth's chaotic surface. "Our planet tried to kill us every day for our entire history. We survived by becoming better predators than anything it could produce. We didn't just adapt to our world. We conquered it so completely that we now consider mortal danger to be entertainment." Admiral Steel looked directly at General Korath. "You represent 847 species that developed in safe environments, with predictable challenges and rational solutions. We represent one species that developed in hell and learned to call it home. We could join your council, General, but within a generation we would be running it. Not because we want to, but because that's what we do. We survive, we adapt, and we overcome. Every single time." The council officers were returned to their ships with a final message. "Go home. Tell your leaders what you've seen. And remember, we told you to stay away from Earth. We weren't protecting ourselves from you. We were protecting the council chamber had never been so quiet." Representatives from 847 worlds sat in stunned silence as General Korath finished his report. The massive Bruthan warrior, once the most feared military commander in the galaxy, looked like he had aged 100 years in the past few weeks. "They returned our ships," he concluded, his voice barely above a whisper. "All of them. Fully repaired, better than they were before. The nanites had not only consumed our armor, they had replaced it with something stronger. Our weapons were upgraded. Our engines were more efficient. They sent us home with better technology than we arrived with." Supreme Counselor Vaek studied the data reports with ancient eyes. "And their message?" "Simple," Korath replied. "They said that Earth was declaring itself a sovereign system, independent of council authority. Any attempt to interfere with human expansion or activities would be considered an act of war. And they made it very clear that we would not survive such a war." The silence stretched on. Finally, Dr. Yyleth spoke from her section. "Perhaps it's time we considered their original request. They told us to stay away from Earth. Maybe we should listen." "Absolutely not," declared Counselor Horex. No single species can be allowed to dictate terms to the galactic community. We need to... His words were cut off as every screen in the chamber activated simultaneously. The image that appeared showed an elderly human woman sitting in what appeared to be a simple office. Behind her, through a window, the blue and green surface of Earth was visible. "Greetings, members of the Galactic Council," the woman said. Her voice was calm, professional, but carried an undertone of absolute authority. "I am Dr. Elena Vasquez, Director of Earth's Xenological Defense Initiative. I believe it's time we had a proper conversation." No one moved. No one spoke. The most powerful beings in the galaxy sat frozen as a single human woman looked at them through their own communication systems. "First, let me address some misconceptions," Dr. Vasquez continued. "You seem to believe that we are a primitive species that has somehow stumbled upon advanced technology. This is incorrect. Humanity has been aware of the Galactic Council for 47 years, since your first radio emissions reached our system. We have been watching you, studying you, and preparing for this eventual contact." She paused, allowing her words to sink in. "We chose not to make contact ourselves because we recognized that our presence would be disruptive to your galactic community. We hoped that by remaining isolated we could avoid the necessity of this conversation. Unfortunately, your repeated attempts to force contact have made this discussion inevitable." Supreme Counselor Vasquez found her voice. "Dr. Vasquez, humanity's refusal to join the galactic community is unprecedented. Every species in our history has benefited from Council membership. We offer peace, prosperity, and technological advancement." Dr. Vasquez smiled, and it was not unkind. "Supreme Counselor, I appreciate your offer. But you don't understand what you're dealing with. Your council represents civilizations that developed on stable worlds, with predictable environments and manageable challenges. Your species learned to cooperate because cooperation was the key to survival in your worlds." She gestured toward Earth, visible behind her. "Humanity developed on a planet that actively tries to kill everything living on it. We didn't learn to cooperate because it was nice. We learned to cooperate because it was the only way to survive long enough to fight the planet we live on. And we've been fighting that battle for so long that we've become very, very good at it." The chamber screens showed images of Earth's surface, storms that could destroy cities, geological activity that reshaped continents, temperature extremes that would kill most galactic species in minutes. And through it all, humans not just surviving, but thriving. Your species see challenges as problems to be solved, Dr. Vasquez explained. We see challenges as competitions to be won. Your people retreat from danger. We charge toward it. Your civilization seeks stability and peace. We've weaponized instability and turned conflict into an art form. She leaned forward in her chair. Let me be very clear about something, Supreme Counselor. We could join your council tomorrow. Within 50 years, we would be running it. Not because we're smarter than you, though we might be, but because we approach every situation as if our survival depends on winning it. Because for us, it always has. That sounds like a threat, growled General Korath. It's not a threat, General. It's a statement of fact. We told you to stay away from Earth because we recognize what would happen if we became part of your galactic community. We wouldn't mean to take over. We wouldn't want to take over. But we would do it anyway because that's what we are. We're a species that looks at the impossible and says, challenge accepted. Dr. Vasquez stood and walked to her window, looking out at Earth. Our planet taught us that the universe is not a safe place. It taught us that survival requires constant vigilance, endless adaptation, and the willingness to face any challenge head-on. We've internalized these lessons so completely that we can't turn them off. She turned back to face the council. You want to know why our ships can ignore physics? Because we refuse to accept that anything is truly impossible. You want to know why our weapons work in ways that violate your understanding of science? Because we've spent 10,000 years turning every limitation into a challenge to be overcome. The screen showed footage of human children playing games that looked like military exercises, students learning mathematics by calculating ballistic trajectories, artists creating beauty from images of destruction, scientists studying the deadliest diseases and environments their planet could produce. This is not training, Dr. Vasquez explained. This is how we live. Every day, every moment we're competing with our environment, with each other, with ourselves. We don't know how to do anything at less than maximum effort because maximum effort is what our planet demands for basic survival. Supreme Counselor Vasquez spoke carefully. Dr. Vasquez, surely there must be some way for our peoples to coexist peacefully. There is, the human woman replied. You leave us alone, and we leave you alone. We establish Earth as a sovereign system, independent of council authority. We don't interfere with your galactic government, and you don't interfere with human expansion or activities. And if we refuse? Asked Counselor Hrex. Dr. Vasquez looked directly at him through the screen. Then you'll discover why every other species in this galaxy learn to cooperate instead of compete. You'll find out what happens when a civilization that treats certain death as a recreational activity decides that you're a threat to their survival. She returned to her chair. I want to be very clear about something. We don't want to fight you. We don't want to conquer you. We don't want to rule the galaxy. We just want to be left alone to do what we do best, survive impossible challenges and turn them into stepping stones for the next impossible challenge. But if forced to fight, we will win, not because we're better than you, but because we've been preparing for this fight our entire evolutionary history. Every war we've ever fought, every disaster we've ever faced, every challenge our planet has thrown at us, it's all been training for the moment when we have to defend our right to exist. The communication ended, leaving the council in absolute silence. For several minutes no one spoke. Finally, Supreme Counselor Vasquez called for a vote. All in favor of recognizing Earth as a sovereign exclusion zone, independent of council authority. The vote was unanimous. Within days, warning beacons were placed throughout the Sol system, broadcasting a simple message in 847 languages. By order of the Galactic Council, this system is under human jurisdiction. Approach only with explicit human permission. Humans gave the Galactic Council one admonition: stay away from Earth. The Council has elected to heed this wisdom. Admiral Sarah Chen, now promoted to Supreme Commander of Earth's Defense Fleet, watched the last Council ship leave the Sol system from the bridge of her flagship. Her communications officer asked if she thought they would be back. Chen looked out at the stars, thinking about the vast galaxy full of civilizations that had learned to play it safe, to avoid conflict, to seek stability above all else. Then she looked back at Earth, spinning through space like a blue and green challenge to everything the universe thought it knew about the possible. Eventually, yes, she said, but by then we'll be ready for them. We're always ready. In the depths of space, human ships spread out toward the stars, carrying with them the lessons of a world that had taught them to turn survival into an art form. The galaxy would learn to give them room, not out of malice, but out of a healthy respect for a species that had looked at hell and decided to call it home. And somewhere in the Council archives, a new file was created with a simple designation: Species Classification, Apex Predator. Recommendation: peaceful coexistence through mutual avoidance. The galaxy was a big place, big enough for everyone, as long as everyone remembered to respect the neighbors who had learned to make the impossible look easy. You from